Speaking from Water, episode 7. I'm here with special guest Peter Jovic from the beautiful Margaret River in Western Australia. It is a complete honor to have you here, Peter. Thank you for taking the time on your Saturday evening. It's I believe around 8 p.m. Your time. It's Saturday morning, my time on the East Coast of America. And welcome, global community. This is a great honor to have you here. For those of you who might not know Peter or Peter's work, mind-blowing stuff. In the water, backlit, Margaret River, the box, just beautiful stuff. I'm going to have a link down below in the comments section to Peter's page on Instagram, and you all can check it out. But Peter, welcome. Happy to have you here, really, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, Sean. That's quite the introduction, and I kind of don't know what to say now. That was quite overwhelming. Thank you,
dude.
I'm honored as well.
Very, very excellent. Can you kind of break it down? Where are you right now? Who's with you? What's going on today in beautiful Margaret River?
Okay, well, breaking it down, I'm at home. I'm in my, I guess what I would call my study. I don't do too much studying here. This is where I do my photography downloading and so forth. And there's, obviously I'm not going to show you around, but there's a mess of paperwork and all sorts of things around, and you know, birthday cards and sorts of things and blah, blah, blah. And whilst we were setting up, I was just mentioning to you before that we're setting up the Zoom meeting, and my wife had drawn a moustache and a beard on me and so forth, and we got rid of that, so that's good. So this is me. But what's been happening in Margaret River today, we had a small swell, but you know, around about the 3 to 4 foot range, and it was clean all day. So offshore winds and nice clean little swell lines, and this is autumn, and autumn is the best time to be here. It pretty much goes off almost every day.
Beautiful. You know, I was watching the surf competition the other week, and I got a good lay of the land. For those of the viewers and people listening out there who've not been or seen Margaret River, could you kind of break down the landscape? How is it? Is it populated very, very much, or is it rugged? You know, from what I've seen, it's just gorgeous, cliffy, lots of hardcore breaks. Tell us a little bit about it.
Yeah, you mentioned, or you touched on hardcore breaks. There's certainly lots of hardcore breaks. It's kind of like a lot of places you go to. The one thing I don't like about here is that it's really hard to have those really fun surfs, because every wave kind of seems to want to kill you, you know. But yeah, it's very green, it's very leafy. There's lots of cows around the place. There's lots of vineyards. So there's lots to see and do for everyone. But in terms of the surf, there's a huge variety of different breaks that you can surf throughout the year. Different times of the year, different breaks sort of, I guess, do their thing. And yeah, there are areas that are very cliffy. It is quite rugged. I would describe the swells that hit the coast as being very raw. So, you know, we don't quite often, apart from this time of the year, we don't have the luxury of having groomed swells that have been traveling for thousands of miles, and having that luxury of having the offshore wind groom the swells. And so quite often, for most of the year, the swells are really raw. You know, and they sort of concentrate on these little patches of reef or slabs of reef or beach breaks and so forth, and which makes the waves quite powerful, obviously. And you know, it's kind of comparable to Hawaii in many ways, where you know, we have consistency of swell all year round. So that's one thing that kind of and due to the concentration of breaks, it does spread the people around. I think Margaret River region has something like about 15,000 people in the district, if I can call it that. So it's getting busier, as you'd expect, because people come here for the surf. There's a rich surf culture, and it's all about the waves and the wine and the beer, the breweries, that sort of thing. Great place to come and see and live.
I love it. I've been to the East Coast of Australia many times, and the culture is just vibrant. And I can only assume the West Coast is very similar. Can you kind of break down the surfing culture and kind of, you know, when I was in Sydney and the southern beaches there, it seemed more populated, not as much it's a very hardcore water community. Is it like that on the West Coast? Do you have your nipper programs? Do you have that same sort of like everyone knows how to swim, everyone kind of knows how to surf basically, or has some connection to the water? What's the culture like?
Yeah, it's actually very much like that. I wouldn't go so far as to saying like the nippers. That's very popular sort of north of Margaret River, around the more heavily populated areas. But you mentioned the East Coast. I think what's different here is the fact that you can get away from people, so to speak. I've already mentioned that the swells are quite raw. And if you want to get in your car and get in with your mates and go for a bit of a search, or maybe go surf a few bommies, and there'll only be a handful of people out there kind of really charging, and these are the people who kind of underground sort of people. There's no sort of fanfare around these sorts of guys, but they'll be paddling out at bommies when it's 10 to 12 foot, with their 8, 9 foot, 10-foot guns, whatever it is that they're paddling out on. And that's kind of the culture, So I think that people live for the waves here. So I guess it's very popular for when it is offshore. Pretty much people down tools like your tradies and so forth, and bang, they're off to the coast and everyone's surfing. So it's all about the waves, all about the surfing, and there's a real positive energy and positive vibe about that in the water. And when the swell is up, like it has been lately, you rock up to spots and you just tingle. It's unbelievable.
Everyone just frothing.
Oh, totally frothing. Absolutely, yeah. Like everywhere you go, you can drive a few kilometers down the coast and get out of your car and you walk up some track somewhere for about 20 minutes or whatever it might be. And I guess you mentioned the East Coast, because we don't have the population here. There's a lot of spots which do require a bit of effort to get to. Like I went to one location this morning and drove in my car, four-wheel drive, for about 20 minutes or so, through big puddles of mud and rocky outcrops and so forth. And I got there and there was one car in a makeshift car park, and there were two guys out surfing. And so, just stuff like that. And I talked to these guys when they came in, and they were just totally frothing, and they were all over it. It's really cool. It's a nice vibe, and there's from what I've seen for the whole time I've been in this region, I don't really see any aggro. Everyone's chilled out. It's a really nice vibe, and people come here because they love the location, they love the surf, and everyone's chilled out and everyone's pretty happy, I think.
Dude, it sounds just incredible. Before we get into your photography and kind of your mindset when you're out there and your whole process, I want to rewind the clock a little bit and kind of understand where you're coming from. Who are your parents? Where did you grow up? Are you from the region? And give me a little bit of your history there from the beginning times.
Okay, I'll take it right back to the day I was born. I was actually born about an hour and a half, maybe 2 hours east of Margaret River, in a little town in the southwest. My parents moved. They were actually immigrants to Australia, and they moved to Perth when I was a baby. So I grew up in the metropolis that is Perth, which is compared to a lot of other cities globally or even in Australia, Perth was pretty much like a small country town. So grew up there, and that's where I first got exposed to the ocean, in terms of the fact that my dad was a fisherman. So I used to accompany him every now and then to go fishing, and I didn't really like fishing. I didn't really have the patience for it, and I just don't really like fishing. My brother and we got into surfing. I got into surfing at quite a late age, at about the age of 15 years old. And from there, we, obviously, like a lot of other people, we just addicted. You mentioned the word frothing before. We were frothing when we were getting barrels, when we weren't really getting barreled, but we were still frothing and that sort of thing. And I moved down to this region in Margaret River about now 7 years ago, it was. So I moved the family down here. I didn't have a job to come to or anything like that. My wife, she's working in the health industry. She got offered a job with one of the local hospitals. She was offered a contract of working. They guaranteed her 1 day a week. We just said, yep, we're done. So we packed up, came down to this region. and we've never looked back. And my kids are now going to school in the local schools here, obviously, and it's fantastic. And we live in a wonderful part of the world. And I mentioned before, it's very leafy, it's very green. There's lots of trees, marri trees, jarrah trees, karri trees, all the trees that are like, you know, the signature sort of vegetation or the flora of this area. And but I've been coming down here since the age of since about 12 years of age. My dad used to bring us down here camping as well. And here we are. So that's pretty much, I guess, my exposure to the region. And yeah, it's an addictive place, and I've always wanted to live here. And when my wife said, "Oh, you know, do you want to move down to Margaret River?" I was like, "Yeah, let's do it." Hard decision.
Yeah, right. I want to touch upon your dad as a fisherman, and I'm sure he took you out on the water a lot. Now, you might not have been too into catching the fish, but do you find that period in your life was maybe the seed where you kind of started understanding water, how water looks when different light hits it, when different swells are coming? I've heard a lot that the fishermen in all different regions of the world kind of know the most about, even more than the surfing culture. So can you kind of elaborate a little bit more on that factor, to how that kind of was a stepping stone to your love of surfing, then your love of photography, and how they all kind of commingle?
Well, I think, and you're right in what you say, but I think that because my father used to take me fishing, and the thing that I remember first up was, I guess, my dad always used to go fishing when it seemed like the conditions weren't so inviting, so to speak. I don't know if that was a good time to catch fish or not, whether it stirred the ocean up, but I always remember the ocean looking stormy and uninviting, and was looking quite grey and looking quite intimidating. And it's always been intimidating from that point on, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. So, but I'll look at it in different ways, whether that kind of influenced me with my perspective of the ocean. I'm not really too sure, but I guess taking note of the ocean in front of me and the movement of the ocean, and in particular when the fronts used to come through and it's windy and it's cold and it's you kind of I guess I don't really know how to put it, but I guess it did ingrain something in me at that point in time, and I guess just being around the ocean to start with was something that it must have been a nurturing force to begin with.
Awesome. So you are now you go and surf at 15. What's that period like between then and then when you're like, hey, I want to get a camera? When does that happen?
Right. Okay. So it's quite interesting actually, because from the time I was surfing, I was actually I guess right into photography even before that period, about a couple of years before that. From when I first started high school, and that was back in the film era, so pre-digital, and I don't want to tell you how old I am and that sort of thing, but it gives you a fair bit of an idea there. But and I was able to learn how to develop and process all my own negatives and print and all that sort of thing. And then taking up surfing, it's an interesting question, because I remember surfing with my brother, who I used to surf with a lot, and a couple of close friends. And I remember paddling out, and like my brother or someone would get a wave, and they'd be like sort of in the pit there, almost getting barreled, or maybe doing a head dip or whatever it was, and you'd be on the shoulder, and you'd kind of like be pretending that you're filming. You start doing the camera roll and that sort of thing, or you're doing that. And I always used to look at the waves and think, oh man, love to I wish I'd captured that particular wave. That would have been totally awesome. But it wasn't but at that point in time with my photography, I was a lot more into I guess if I can call it a journalistic style of photography. So I used to like going to photograph things like protests and meetings and motorsports and that sort of thing. But the ocean just sort of, I guess, pushed me in that direction, where really all I wanted to do was start photographing lineups and things like that. And it was a trip several years later where I went to the northwest of Western Australia, and I was with a friend of mine, and just the colours, the aqua blue of the water, and with the contrast of the land, which is like red sand, limestone outcrops and that sort of thing. The contrast was fantastic. And it was really then that really kicked it off for me. And I took my camera up there. I remember I had a couple of different lenses and so forth. And like the mountain goats that you see up there, I used to traverse up and down the trails and tracks and look down the lineups and try and get as many different angles as I possibly could. And I've still got quite a few of those photos in my photo albums, not my hard drive or anything like that, but my photo albums. So, and that kind of really kicked it off because I'd look at the colors, look at the perfect surf, and in between the surfing, I was out, well, I was either surfing or taking photos. That was pretty much it. And I guess I was hooked on it.
So when did you get a water housing and enter the water to capture what you were seeing, and what kind of was just motivating you before to want to, I guess, get the water housing?
Yeah, it's kind of weird because, you know, I'm shooting from the land and so forth. And I remember having a conversation with a surfer in the car park who was also a photographer. And I said to him, "Oh, you know what? I'd really love to get in the water and be part of it and capture what was happening in the water as well." And I remember this person said to me, he says, "Mate, you don't want to do that." And I said, "Why is that?" And he goes, "If you get in the water, you're going to miss so much that you'll end up regretting it." And I said, "Oh, you got to be kidding me." And he's like, "No, don't do it, man. Just don't do it, you know." And I thought, "Oh, I'm going to do it." You know? So the first thing I actually did was I've started out getting a, you know, back then, like one of the first GoPros that came out. So whenever that was. And I thought I'd learn, even though I was quite familiar with the land-based sort of photography, I thought I'd learn by getting this GoPro and going out swimming around and just getting a feel for, you know, being in the right areas and where you needed to be and so forth. So I did that. And then when I ended up getting my first housing, which was a custom-made first housing, and this is a bit of a tragic story, actually. I remember getting my camera, putting it in the housing and thinking, right, I've got to test it before I take it out into the water. So I'd put it into the housing, you know, seal it up, put it in my bathtub, make sure there was no leaks in the house or anything like that, take it back out. Yep, that's good. Do it again. I must have done it about 3 or 4 times. The first time I took my housing out and I put my camera, and it had a fisheye lens in it. It was a 10mm fisheye. I had the camera in the housing, sealed it all up, thinking, right, I'm ready to go. And this day was actually pumping, hey, and I was really nervous and really excited. And I swam out to this location. I remember this wave came through, and it was such a perfect wave. And I remember when I held the camera up to take a photo, I had this red light flashing within the camera, and I've looked and I could see the water level inside my housing was about halfway up, and I was like going, that's not right, you know, that's not right. So I ended up swimming back in. Basically, at the end of the day, I lost my camera, lost my fisheye lens. The corrosion ended up going into the trigger for the you know, for the pistol grip and so forth. And that was my first lesson. The first lesson cost me a camera, a fisheye lens, and basically the housing then needed to be sent off to the service, then a new pistol grip. So it was a very expensive lesson. And I'm pretty sure that I might have shed a tear or two that day. And I just thought to myself, what could I possibly have done that was incorrect? I ended up working it out. It was basically the cord from the pistol grip got pinched in between the dome and the actual body of the housing. So it was an expensive lesson. That was a long time ago now, and it's never happened since.
So that for a lot of people probably would have cashed out any future water endeavors. You know, you might have just been like, hey, I'm just going to stick to the land. But in your case, you persevered through that tough moment, and you must have then just doubled down, got new gear, and then you're back out there, it sounds like.
Well, you know, actually talking about it now, I feel like a bit of a post-traumatic stress disorder coming on, because I was like, oh, I haven't thought about that for a long time. And now that I've actually mentioned it, it's like
your heart rate's going up a little bit. Yeah,
like,
mine just did too.
Yeah.
Because for those who take water photos, that is like the ultimate fear that the water is going to come in your camera, and yeah.
Oh, Sean, I was obviously a total, if you don't mind me saying, a total kook at the process. You know, I'd practiced in immersing it in the tub and so forth. But to answer your question, I was pretty much gutted for several days afterwards. But it's interesting because my first thought was, I've got to no, I'm not stopping at that. I'm back in there for sure, because that's what I wanted to do, even after the person said to me, and the words rang in my ears when that person said to me, don't get in the water, don't do it, and I was like, oh, I thought maybe he's right. And then I thought, no, no. No
so,
way. It's just something.
But you knew what you could get out there. And that's probably what drove you to then double down and get back out there, because that comment he said there to you in the car park where you're going to miss a lot of it. And that's the thing, you can sit on the beach and you can get all the clips, but you're not going to get that one shot that's just the beauty of the beauties. And shooting water, that you might only get a few of those great clips or those great photos, but those great photos are going to be 1,000 times better than any land shot you could have pulled off. I mean, would you agree?
For sure, 100% agree with you. I think the other aspect to that is that what the advice that the person had given to me was, they obviously hadn't carried out that form of photography before, because what they missed was the fact that when you're actually in the water, you're engaged with the energy and you're also engaged with the people that are out there as well. But for me, it's more so the energy of the waves and so forth. It's almost like you're surfing. Like I feel like I've been barreled more often out in the water taking photos than what I actually have surfing. And probably gone over the falls a lot more as well.
And you are a surfer, and you're also a very accomplished photographer. And I know there's probably a part of you that has this dilemma when you enter a break and you see it going off. You're like, do I grab my board or do I grab my camera? Can you kind of speak to that dilemma?
Okay, I can. The dilemma is actually a lot easier to deal with at this point in time. I actually had quite a serious injury to one of my knees when I was actually shooting from the water at a kind of a remote location. I was actually the only one in the water. I was just shooting, random beach breaks that were quite sort of abrupt beach breaks, if I can call it that.
Yeah, and just to interrupt real quick, those are some of my favorite shots that you have are those empty wave shots. They're just incredible, but I digress, go on.
Yeah, no, so I guess due to a really bad injury, I actually got into the photography a lot more than the surfing. That sort of progressed more than the surfing. But there was a time just not too long ago where I was out with a friend of mine who lives on the south coast, not about a few hours from where we live. And we're out surfing a beach break, and we're actually the only people out surfing. And it was only about 3 to 4 foot, but beautiful fun size, perfect shape waves, beautiful backlit afternoon. The waves were just sparkling, nice little barrels. And every time a wave came through, all I could think about was actually being in the water and shooting the waves in between. I'm sure I probably missed quite a few waves that went sliding past, because I was looking at these waves breaking down the beach either side of me going, oh man, I'd love to be taking a photo, but I persisted with the surfing anyway. In fact, that particular day, I didn't take my camera with me because I knew that if I had have done that, I probably would have gone in and grabbed my camera and started shooting my mate or my friend, if I can call him that.
Yeah.
So the dilemma, I guess, isn't that, it's not that much of a dilemma for me, because I shoot more these days, more than what I surf. And the reason I do that is because I guess I found it a lot more difficult than surfing. A lot of places here require, you to walk long distances. The access isn't all that easy. It's not like you can just rock up to a car park here and just get out of your car and bang, you're out in the surf. But a lot of the places do require a lot more effort than that. But the way I see it, the water photography side of it has actually kept me involved. Even though I'm not surfing as much, I've kind of swapped it around a little bit, but it's kept me in touch with the ocean and surfing in general, and with what's been going on in the local region and surfers in general. And so it's just another avenue that I've taken, but I still feel that I've totally got my finger on the pulse when it comes to surfers and surfing and what's happening.
Absolutely. And let's talk a little bit about those breaks you're entering, because they are so hardcore. And I mean, I know I would feel more comfortable on my board in these spots, but quite honestly, over swimming with just my camera. You know, my experience with locations like yours could be maybe like Santa Cruz, that kind of place where it's like heavy. There's lots of stuff underneath you. You know, it's a very sketchy situation. I want to know, first of all, when you roll up to these spots, you know, I'm sure you do know a lot about them because you do have experience. But what are the type of things that go through your mind that you're like, all right, these are your checklists I'm kind of trying to get out of you? Like, where's your headspace? How do you know where your safety protocols are? Tell me a little bit about that.
Okay, I think the first thing on my checklist would be to check, double check, and triple check that my housing is all okay. And other than that, I think for the most part is depending on where it is. So there's a few locations not far from where I live, within about 10 minutes drive or so forth. And they are heavy breaks. And there's been times where I've been out at these locations and I've seen guys taking off and snap their boards and break their ribs on that, on that same wave at the same location. So for me, I guess it's a point or a fact of just sort of watching it for a while. And I like to watch the surfers enter the water to start with, and just kind of get a feel for what's happening with what the ocean's doing in terms of any currents and so forth, and pick an entry point and so forth. That's pretty much what I look at. And the thing with this area here is you can turn up to a spot, and depending on what time you turn up, there might be 4-foot sets, and if you sit around and have a bit of a wait and a bit of a look, all of a sudden it's 8-foot bombs coming through. So I like to get an idea of what's happening to start with. So I just monitor what's going on. And in terms of my checklist, yes, got my flippers, got my housing, all that sort of thing. Double check all that sort of stuff. And I just pretty much sit on the beach and I watch, and that's pretty much my checklist. I don't really go too far or too deep into it, so to speak.
Do you wear a helmet?
I used to wear a helmet, but I haven't worn a helmet for a long time. But I had a moment not too long ago where I went out to one location, and I was shooting 50mm, and this surfer who I actually knew was on this rifling straight towards me. And when you're looking through the viewfinder, you've kind of got tunnel vision, and it's very easy. You don't have that peripheral vision as to what's going on, but I could see that this surfer was just barreling straight for me in the barrel. And all of a sudden I thought, probably going to get run over here. And it was that close. And at that moment, I actually thought to myself, I probably should be wearing a helmet out here.
So kids out there listening, wear your helmets. Yeah.
Absolutely.
Gas, great brand. Yeah. So I want to talk a little bit more about the box in particular. When you're shooting there, I'm looking at some of your pictures, and it just seems like the most gnarly setup. How are you positioning yourself at that particular location? Is there a nice channel? Are you getting thrown over the falls to get those images? Like, what's that situation like?
Yeah, well, the box is a really short, intense wave. So, and there is a big channel just on the right hand of there. So, you can shoot it in relative safety, and you might have seen a lot of footage of lots of photographers out there and their skis and so forth. So you can shoot in relative safety. I think that for the people who are really brave, and the people who go out there and shoot fisheye. I've never shot fisheye out there before, but there are people who do that. Like people like your local legends in the area, like your Russell Ords and so forth. What those guys can do out there is quite amazing. But having said that, when you go out of the box, when you look at it from the land or even from the water, the wave can sometimes look so perfect, but it's so vicious and so concentrated on this slab of reef. There's so much power behind it, and it wedges up, and it's just quite incredible. And when the spit hits you, because most waves spit out there, stings your face and so forth. There's a couple of big, like boils and like big, bits of reef, and these boils, when you're around there, they kind of, once the wave passes, they kind of try and then suck you under the water and so forth, so it can be quite an intimidating spot. But I guess in terms of safety, that you can find some relative safety out there, I believe, for sure. You can shoot in safety. Yep.
And what would be your favorite local break?
My favorite local break?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, that's actually a pretty good question, because I like to move around so much in this region. Like my local area just down the road here, there's so many waves there, but I don't go there all that often because there's so many waves. So to paint a picture for you, if I drive down the road from where I live, when I get to the main road, I stop and I have to make a choice. I can turn right or I can turn left. Either way, there's going to be sick waves, So it's just depending on the conditions at the time. So sorry, I went off the track there. What was the question?
Your favorite break in your little region, like when you wake up in the morning, like for instance, myself, I kind of always go to this one spot, and I don't know if it's something in my head, but I want to know from your perspective, like, how do you pre-plan where you're going to drive that car to?
Okay, so I do all of my pre-planning the night before. I always have a plan A and a plan B. So depending on the wind, the tide, and obviously the swell size, I'll always say, right, this is where my plan A is, and then I'll have a plan B. And if plan B doesn't work, I'll forget about it, because if plan A hasn't worked to start with, then I know I'm on the wrong I'm on the wrong path, so to speak. But it's a hard one to answer. The only reason I'm having difficulty in answering it is because most of the waves here are like my favorite waves. I love shooting most of the waves here. So we have one spot down the road called Cobblestones. Great place to shoot from the land, not a bad place to shoot from the water as well. And then just down from there, just a couple of miles down, we've got some heavy, reef breaks that break very similar to like pipeline. They're very remote. You have to walk a long way. So it just kind of depends on how I'm feeling, or you can go down to the box, or you can go further north up towards what we call the Yelling Up region. And again, depending on the swells, what do you want to shoot? Do you want to shoot left-hand barrels, or do you want to shoot right-hand spitting barrels? Or do you want to shoot grinding beach breaks, or do you want to shoot a point break? So that's the dilemma I have.
Yeah. So speaking to this whole process, in lead up to this interview, we kind of had some emails back and forth, and you spoke to really following the light. I think that was your quote, as opposed to like following a surfer to shoot a surfer. So I that struck me, because I'm totally on that train. You do have excellent, just awesome photos of surfers in your Rolodex there, but I'm catching a vibe that really that's not the point of your endeavor. It's more of an aesthetic with the water, as opposed to some sort of surf magazine kind of shot you're looking to get, even though you probably are getting those while you're out there. Can you kind of speak to your philosophy, like what drives that bubbling up in your soul? Is it the light?
Well, Sean, you've actually you've touched the nerve in me there, because that's exactly what it is for me. And I think that the more I've gone about doing surf photography, maybe it's a maturity thing, or maybe just knowing what you actually want to do in terms of your photography, you've hit the nail on the head. It's actually all about the light. And for me, I try and follow, I have 4 C's. Now, you have all these, you should be fully aware of all the principles of photography through your composition and your rule of thirds and everything else that goes with it. But for me, I always try and look for, ingrained with the light, color, contrast, clarity, and composition. So they're the things I really look for. And when you mention the light, I guess when you get familiar with the locations here, you kind of have an idea of the locations that really present well at different times of the morning or the evening, whatever it might be, and how they respond to that light during those times of day. So it's definitely all about the light. And you touch on the fact with having surfers in images or whatever it might be, I'm definitely transitioning more to, I guess, just trying to, and maybe even simplify things by just really letting the light do the work for me, because I believe that if you can capture the light, then you're halfway to having a good photo to start with anyway. So the lights, photography is all about the light. It's all about light and matter. So, you know, without the light, you don't have a decent photo.
With that said, do you think your previous experience before digital informs, you know, with film, informs your current place now in the digital world? I spoke with DJ Strunts in a previous podcast, and that was kind of his big takeaway from, he's an old school guy. He worked in film and then he went to digital. Can you speak to that process for you yourself, how that kind of commingles into this time period?
Yeah, well, I think so, because I guess that back in the film era, everything was about having your exposures right to start with, and so you're always looking for that beautiful light to begin with. It's not like back in a film era where if you've got something that's been totally underexposed, then you can just give it a boost in digital. So, you know, I've always believed that, I guess what transitions from that film era to the digital era, with regards to your question, is the fact that at the end of the day, if you've got your exposures set in stone and you've got correct exposures to start with, then there's minimal things you have to do outside of that. So I guess it's having that film era exposure, I guess it forms a fundamental or a base. And I guess I've never really thought about it the way you've said that, but I guess it must automatically transition into this era that we're in now with the whole digital era and so on. So, you know, just by having your exposures right and looking for that light, yeah, I think that, you know, it certainly must translate into that sort of space.
What has informed you the most, or what particular moment or series of moments has kind of like made the most impact on your work? Maybe it's a person, maybe it's a time period, maybe it's a something you read possibly, that has kind of transformed your output to this present day, if that makes sense.
Well, I guess that there's people out there that or that I've taken interest in their work to start with, that have maybe been, you know, or not maybe, they've definitely been inspirational in giving me something to, I guess, try different things and trying to, I guess, do it my way, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely, yes.
So, you know, it's difficult, you know, like I can be, I've had moments where I've been on a cliff top here, not far from where I live, and down the road, only just, you know, several miles down the road, I know that a spot like North Point is cooking, and I know that it's pumping, and there's a lot of guys out there getting sick barrels and so forth. And here I am, I'm up the top of a cliff, and I'm shooting these lines, and there's no one else around, but there's these beautiful pastel colors with the sun coming up behind me, and in front of me, the ocean is stretching out, the Indian Ocean is stretching out towards Madagascar, yeah, as far as the eye can see. And there's lines that are stacked. I don't know if you can see them behind me.
Yeah, dude, I'm looking at it.
Yeah.
You're describing what I'm looking at.
Right. So these lines is exactly what I'm talking about. So I know it's going off down the road, but I'm here in this space and I'm on my own, and I'm really taking something out of it, and I'm feeling the energy of the ocean. And I guess that it almost feels like a spiritual place. And that for me is something that's kind of made me head down the path as to where I am going with my photography, because I'm finding an element of total relaxation and absorption in what I'm doing. And as I mentioned earlier, it kind of just feels like it's almost like it's a religious experience.
So would you say almost the process in itself of the creation is the point, and not so much even what comes as the output, even though that's very gratifying and kind of the cherry on the top? The actual doing of it is the point of the endeavor. Is that, would you say so?
That's 100% correct, Sean. I think you've summarized that. You've hit the nail on the head. So I can go to locations where, like I did last weekend, I don't just sit around. I move around a lot when I shoot, but I can be in one location, I can spend hours there. And if I'm the only one there and there's no other surfers, just myself, the ocean, maybe dolphins jumping out of the water, maybe some whales, or there's no footsteps on the beach. That's the sort of thing that, like you say, it's that process of going through that. And what happens afterwards is, like you say, it's the cherry on top. And yeah, I don't know, and that's why I do it, you know. It's the whole natural being absorbed by nature and just feeling that energy. That's where it's at for me.
Well, let's speak to this. You have this incredible natural experience. The cherries over there at the end. You then need to go to your office, like everyone who works does. So you're in your process of going through I'm sure just thousands of photos. How do you go about doing that? Do you have in your mind, like, oh, that was the one, because you know what you have? Are you like going to that, or do you kind of like go through them individually and kind of comprehend them? I wanna know your development stages.
Yeah, that's a great question. I think subconsciously, when you're capturing the images, you always know that, you know, which one you think is the one that that you're going to, I guess maybe, I don't know, obsess on it. But there's always one, and you'd probably know yourself that when you're looking through the viewfinder, and you just get that moment, you go, okay, I think that one is the one that was something that I was actually looking for today. But in answer to your question, I will go through all the images during the process. I'll probably skip through a lot of the images that I have and probably hurry on to the one that I think I really want to have a look at. But the thing that I find is that you can, you mentioned about having so many images and so forth, you can go through and have all of these images, but the one thing I need to do is, once I've sat down and had a look at what I've got, quite often I'll actually walk away and I won't look at the images maybe till the next day, because you can be so inundated with everything that all the images that you've shot, that after a while, I don't know if you've ever gone to look for a house to buy, or rent a house, or even a car or something like that. Once you've looked at so many, everything just starts to look the same. So you need to remove yourself and then go back and go, right, that's what I was after. And that's why I went out that morning to try and capture an image like that. And then when you look at it, it kind of sets everything apart. You mentioned the cherry on the top. So you go back to that. And occasionally you'll come across images, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well, where when you do go back to them, it might even be a week later, or it might even be a month later, and you'll look at an image and you'll go, oh, wow, you know, I didn't even, how did that one sort of slip through the cracks? And you go back and you have a look at it and you just go, wow, you know, that one was something that was totally overlooked, because you might have been more focused on something that was already at the forefront of your mind.
100%. And on that note, do you ever delete anything, or do you just have stacks of hard drives full of every shot you've ever taken?
The only reason I'm chuckling is because I have stacks of hard drives, and I've also had hard drives that have failed on me as well, external hard drives, so backups that have failed, and I just go, oh man, how many backups do you need for your backups? And you know, they're already on my hard drive, they're on an external hard drive, and so yeah, I've got hard drives everywhere. I've got so many of them. You know, I think you first started getting something like I don't know, 38 gig hard drive, and then you move up to your terabyte hard drive, and then you're at 4 terabytes, and then next thing you know, you're ringing up the local data center and seeing if you can open an account in some sort of cloud account or whatever it might be. That's not where I'm at, but that's kind of, it feels that's where I'm at. And when I look through my hard drives, it's kind of like there's tens of thousands of images. And it's a really good question, because even today, when I was going through the images that I captured this morning, I was thinking to myself, oh man, you know, there's just so much other material, and here I am looking at something that I've captured today, and yet there's all this stuff dating back from last week, last month, last year, 5 years ago, and occasionally I'll go into my hard drive and I'll open up a random folder, and there'll be this folder there, and there'll be all these images there, and I'll go, oh wow, who took those? And I'll be like, oh, hang on, oh, I took those at such and such, and I'll think, oh, when was that? And I'll start, trying to remember when it was. But the thing I love about photography as well is that you can capture an image, and when you hear a song or you eat food or something, and it takes you back to a moment in time. So a song will take you back to, you might remember maybe the first girl you kissed, or the first time you went out with your friends to the movies, whatever it might be. Photography for me is like that as well, where quite often I'll bump into someone at a local car park and they'll say, oh, I saw you at such and such on such and such day, and I was out in the water. And I said, oh, okay, I can't, what sort of board were you surfing, and what sort of wetsuit? And they would tell me, and bang, I'm straight there. Oh, it was 2 or 3 years ago, but I can remember the exact day, exactly what the conditions were like, 4 to 6 foot, perfect offshore. And there's this guy, yeah, that's right. He had that typically white board and black wetsuit. So that's the other thing I love about photography. When I look at an image, it always takes me back to that moment in time. And I think that's one of the reasons I really love photography, is that you immortalize something. It's like that, just that moment.
It's like the closest thing to a time machine we have with present technology.
Totally. It's amazing. That for me is just, it blows me away.
I think circling back to, that dilemma between surfing and shooting, it's always like, oh, I can catch the wave in the moment, and that is sick. But if you catch the wave in your camera, well, you can relive that on your deathbed 50 years from now and be like, oh yeah, that was it. And yeah, I can totally relate.
Yeah.
I want to speak. You're a family man. I also am a family man. Speak to how you balance the two. Your passion, your artistic drive, combined with having to do the great job of being a father, and how the two commingle, and maybe the pieces where stress might lie, because I see them in my own life, and I'd like to know from you.
I guess my story is the fact that first and foremost, I have a wife who's so supportive of what I do, always encouraging and supportive. And when she wanted to pursue her career, and I was doing long hours at work, and we had 2 young children, and I've gone, if you want to pursue your career, how about I stay home and be the stay-at-home dad? But great, we came to an agreement. 5 years later, I was still the stay-at-home dad, which was awesome. I could drop the kids off at school, and then bang, I'm down the beach all day, pick them up in the afternoon. And then after that, I would make the kids come with me back down to the beach, whether we went for a surf or whether we were shooting. I've got a couple of cameras and so forth. So occasionally I'd hand a camera over to my daughter or my son and say, here, you're shooting as well, So, and at the time they would cringe, oh, okay. But they would always have so much fun, because we're climbing over rocks, we're walking up and down beaches, and they're seeing the natural environment. They're octopus in the water, and stingrays and dolphins and whales and blah blah blah. So I was really fortunate to have that 5 years, not only to be with my kids and to really get to know them and build that relationship with them, but also it gave me that time where it gave me a lot of free time, where I was able to get out and do what I wanted to do. And really, I really felt like I lived life. And it's a little bit different now. The kids have grown up a lot more, and there's always, you maybe know this yourself, there's always something going on, from getting them to, whether it's music lessons or sports or anything it might be. And so life's really fast paced, and I found it difficult over the past, I guess, couple of years to really find the time for myself to really immerse myself back into that whole ocean, and find the time to do the things that I want to do, because life's not just about what I want to do and what makes me happy. It's also about what makes my kids and my family happy, and at the end of the day, they're the most important things.
I read you loud and clear. How old are your children now?
So my daughter has just turned 14 and my son is 12.
Epic.
Yeah, 14
Epic.
and 12. It's getting to that age where, like, things are getting really tricky.
Yes, mine are 1, 6, and 9, and yeah, my wife also works, and I am lucky enough to be the SOD, as they call it here in America, the stay-at-home dad, and yeah,
Right.
it fits very well with what I do also. So it is a blessing and a dream at the same time.
How good
you
is
know,
it?
oh, dude, it's the best.
I recommend it to anyone.
Absolutely. I mean, if you
can,
if you can do it, there's a lot of men resist the concept and resist the framework of it. I don't know why, because it's maybe it doesn't go with what has been done historically in the past and culture.
That's right.
But
yeah.
But dude, it's top notch, because when they're older and you don't have that time, and it's
Totally.
it's a total blessing. And to be able to raise children at the beach is something that I didn't have growing up myself. I'm from Washington, D.C., and I just dreamed my whole life to make it to the beach. And when I did, and now I have this opportunity to show the children the beach, it's just, raising water people.
Yeah, totally. And that whole environment encourages those conversations about the actual environment that we live in, and, taking care of it and being respectful of it. And, that's one thing through photography. And I have this little catchphrase that I always refer to: the ocean, the pulse of life. And I really believe that, and the things that I see around the ocean and that whole natural environment, especially where I'm living now, it's so pristine, and it's something that we have to respect, and it's something that we got to protect it, man. It's given us so much, and I think we've all got a duty to look after it. And
absolutely.
To pass on.
And then that's what I was just going to follow that up with, is to pass it on to our next generation that's in the wings.
Yep.
On that note, what in particular would you recommend the common man out there focus on to help us do that?
I'm sorry, what was that, Sean?
As far as what would you kind of particularly suggest to the common man to help us keep the ocean clean and pristine? Is it a factor of just recognizing how special this thing is, to engage it mentally, obviously not pollute and do stuff like that, but kind of on a both a action oriented level and a conceptual level? What do you suggest people, the common folk, the people out there who are interested in the ocean, do to bring the ocean more into their lives? Say they can't be at the beach every day. What are some things that they can do to be more beach people?
Well, I guess at the end of the day, it doesn't matter where you are, whether it's actually around the ocean or whether it's in a landlocked area. At the end of the day, if you have respect for the environment that you're in, and you're looking after it, if you're picking up a little bit of litter here and there, going to and from different locations, and I think communicating it to people as well. So you need to always be communicating it. If you see someone doing something that you perceive as being, the wrong thing in terms of the environment and so forth, you can always have a word with people. But I think that, the actions through, the way I see it, actions through your children is a very strong tool as well. I think the surfing community is very lucky in the sense that, we're all supposed to be environmentally aware and environmentally tuned, as it is anyway, because we are around the ocean. Sometimes I feel like that can be forgotten. But, because, there's a lot more people around the ocean. So, a lot more crowds. There's, a lot more people who are unaware. But you just need to, I guess, be mindful of where you are. And I think we have a lot of travelers come to this region as well. And I think people need to be highly respectful of where they are. So, I wouldn't like to go to other people's areas and leave rubbish laying around. You pick up after yourself, and all that sort of thing. I don't really know how to go about explaining it, but I think that if you act in the right way, and people see you acting in the right way, then that will follow as well. So you've got to be setting an example, and you just got to be promoting it.
Modeling. Great words of advice.
Yeah.
I have two final questions for you before we wrap up this epic interview. Okay, what is it? What advice would you give to the children or the young people at heart who want to put their toes into this image capturing game as far as capturing the aesthetics of water? What kind of words of wisdom do you have?
I think firstly, I would say that for people who are younger or young or youth at heart, they have time on their hands. They have a long runway of being able to produce whatever they want to produce and develop their own styles. So I think that people, I would recommend that people be patient and try and develop their own techniques, learn as much as they can from other people as well. But be patient and just I guess, you know, by try and step outside, try and step outside the square. And if you may be around other people and maybe shooting the same subjects, the same waves, maybe just think about, you know, how you can go about it, doing it a little bit differently, whether it's, you know, slowing down your shutter speeds or your different settings or shooting from the back of the wave or the front of the wave, whatever it might be. But I think I would say to people, don't just follow the crowd, be your own person, be happy with what you're doing and be confident in what you're doing. Your skills will always improve. And once you find that place where you're satisfied in what you're doing yourself, you'll be much happier for it. And I think your photography in general will really excel, and it will excel quite rapidly because it'd be quite easy to get in a stagnant area, feel like you're doing the same thing. But, you know, a lot of people want things instantly. But I always cast my mind back to people who are the stalwarts of the industries, of the surfing industry and so forth, and surf photography in general, where they've been doing it for a long time. And, you know, that little saying where good things come to those who wait, I think is a good piece of advice in terms of, you know, you work hard at it, be confident what you're doing, and eventually your results will pay dividends.
Epic advice. Epic. Last question. What is the meaning of life?
I had a coffee mug, and on the side of that coffee mug was a statement, and I've never forgotten it. And on the statement was, life is a mystery to be lived, not a problem to be solved. And I don't know, that's kind of how I live my life. But I'll also go back to the whole ocean thing about the ocean, the pulse of life. What is the meaning of life? Oh, mate, honestly, I could probably sit here and rant and rave about a whole lot of different things that don't make sense. But I think the meaning of life at the end of the day is that you've got to be comfortable with who you are and the people that you're around. Surround yourself with good, happy people, supportive people. And I think that if you can keep life simple and do the things which make you happy, because at the end of the day, that's the most important thing, then I think you'll do well in life. It doesn't matter what you do.
Words of wisdom. Love it, dude. Love it. Peter,
Thanks.
This has just been an amazing interview, one of the best, and I can't wait to get it out there and share it with the world. And thank you extremely heaps much for taking your Saturday evening and spending it with us.
Sean, thank you very much, mate. I've really enjoyed talking with you, and I'd like to thank you for giving me the opportunity to, you know, I feel blessed to be able to be on this interview, and I thank you so much, mate. Seriously,
bro. I hope maybe we can do a round two, you know, in the future, maybe in the next season, and we can catch up with you and see how everything's going.
Yeah, cool. And if you're ever in this region, you make sure you better look me up.
You know I will.
You better.
And thank you, and please tell your family I said thank you for your time also.
Thank you, Sean. I really appreciate that, and all the best to your family as well.
Thank you very, very much, and we'll be in contact in the future, and hope you have a great evening.
Yeah, let's stay in contact. Thanks, Sean.
All right.
Good man.
That's a wrap. Dude,